And I also wanted to thank Representative Pruitt from Oklahoma, who was our pinch hit Democrat co-chair for the committee. Ken Marshall, the representative from Rhode Island, who's also the co-chair of the steering committee with Representative Kappinga. So he was going to have a very busy 2 days here, co-chairing the steering committee and also serving as the Democrat co-chair on the planning committee. And unfortunately for us, but fortunately for the state of Rhode Island, he had to stay behind because of their budget issues, which I understand went into the night last night and they're still dealing with. So thank you very much, Representative Pruitt, for stepping in. We appreciate that. All right, next I'd like to ask the co-chairs of the Judiciary Committee to come forward. And I'm not sure if it's going to be one or both. It looks like just one's heading to the podium. And if, however it is that the co-chairs would like to do that, that's fine.
Well, good morning, everyone. On behalf of myself and my co-chair, Senator Jim Arnold of Indiana, I just want to thank you for all your work here today. So our work in the Judiciary Committee yesterday, obviously we have a number of points that we go through in all of our packets. That had a lot of substance, substance to bite off for one day. I would say that the main action that our committee took and for recommendation for the General Assembly was to break our committee down into two subcommittees, one dealing with the application and one dealing with the call. And that's generally how the 12 bullet points that we were given by the Executive Committee deal with that subject matter, with the exception of two of the bullet points. The first one that you'll see on your roster of bullet points was the process to ensure that there's not a Article 1 rub in anything that we do. Our committee disposed of that for the time being, saying the application subcommittee will look into that as they determine other items that we assign to them, and that it was kind of the consensus of our committee that it's not an issue at this point, that it's something that we need to keep in mind. But later on, when we've adopted more of a framework for proceeding, to come back and revisit and make sure that we have not have any concerns regarding that. Again, we had three willing souls to help us out with the subcommittee efforts, and I'm not sure if it's prudent at this time to make a motion to create those two subcommittees, or if that's something that the Executive Committee or the Speaker would want to do later on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. At this time, we're going to not take any floor action on the committee reports, and then we have actually subcommittees in each of these, and we're going to try to create those as part of some Executive Committee action after we've had a chance to digest it all.
Very good. And for the body's edification here, for the two subcommittees that we have planned as a full committee, the subcommittee on applications would deal with points, and if you're going to imagine numbers down your roster of bullet points in your packets, subcommittee on applications will deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 12, which our committee roughly estimated to deal more with application. And then the subcommittee on the call will deal with points 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. And then we also created a 13th point that is indicated in the minutes, for lack of a better term, of what you have before you. And that deals with dispute resolution at the call, and then also at the application. One of the concerns that was raised by one of our members, actually a series of our members, was what happens if we have some type of contestation that occurs somewhere throughout the process of the call, that we should have a process in place, our committee should have some type of process in place to work through whatever disputes might arise, whether it be federal government, whether it be state government, arising from those two. Again, we have some subcommittee members or gentlemen that were stepped up to fill the gap of a subcommittee chair, and we certainly appreciate that. It was a very hearty dialogue that we had throughout the course of the afternoon. And I guess at this point, Mr. Speaker, I turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you. You can remain at the podium if you'd like. Questions or comments, and these can of course include members of the committee who'd like to come forward if they'd like and discuss anything that went on in the committee, or of course any other member who's here today who'd like to ask questions or comment on the committee's action.
And Mr. Speaker, could I address the body one more time?
Sure.
The motion that we had in our committee for the subcommittee on the application, what we told that subcommittee, their primary role is to investigate the applications that have been made historically, the types of applications, the content of the applications, the timelines of those applications, and there was an instruction by the body to determine, for that subcommittee to determine that any application that had not died by self-infliction, a timeline in itself, or had been withdrawn would be treated as a live application for the collection of those statistics going forward. We put them on a 3-month timeline to return that information back to us at the full committee level, and the other bullet points will be addressed by those subcommittees in constant contact over the course of the next few months until we get to the next meeting.
Okay. Other questions for the subcommittee or for the committee co-chair? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much for the report, Mr. Co-Chair. Appreciate that. Let me just comment. I know that the bulk of this work is going to be on the ongoing action in the next several months. And those of you who have agreed to work on these subcommittees, I know it wasn't just because you didn't have anything else to do this summer. It was because you were as interested in achieving our goal as anyone here. So we appreciate the extra time and effort that you're going to be putting in over the next several months as we head into December. At this time, then, I'd like to call forth the co-chairs of the Rules and Procedure Committee, and looks like this is going to be a joint act, so probably won't be as funny as the Smothers Brothers. For those of you old enough to remember the Smothers Brothers.
Who's on first?
Yes, that's right. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, we spent some significant time deliberating these issues. The first 15 minutes was discussing whether guest attendees should be allowed to vote, and I was afraid that we were going to run out of runway before we even got the plane off the ground to take on any other issues that we had in front of us. And we finally did decide that because none of us were authorized by our state assemblies to be here, that the guest legislators had just as much a right to weigh in on the discussion as anybody else, because all of it was going to be non-binding and be recommendations for a future discussion that would be had. I think it's important that we point out the balance in this room is not reflective of the American balance. There are only 6 Democrats that are here today. There were only 3 Democrats in the room when we were making these discussions. Therefore, it's very important to note whatever came out of this meeting, if the blue states decide to join, and I hope that they do, because these matters are not going to fix themselves, and they're going to require action on the state legislatures to try and fix the various issues that we will hopefully one day debate on what can be fixed and how it should be fixed, that all of these are subject to change. Nothing we do here is binding. Nothing we've decided here will be what will happen if a convention is called, and that is okay. We have to resolve ourselves to the fact that every single journey starts with the first step. And yesterday we took a first step. We set a tone, a professionalism. We were able to demonstrate that people from diverse states can come together and have serious and substantive conversations without breaking down into an argument that couldn't be risen above. And so from that aspect, I think we did make some progress. Having said that, we did have a very legitimate conversation about a few of these points. Now that we had, I believe, how many points do we have total? I think we had some 13 points total. We got through 3 of them in 3 hours. And it was noted that the initial Philadelphia convention went from May to September. So the idea that we were going to accomplish a whole lot in 3 hours wasn't the purpose or the intent of our meeting there. But I was encouraged by our deliberations. With that, I would invite my co-chair to come up and talk a little bit about what we did discuss.
Thanks, Senator. I appreciate Senator Holzman from Missouri. it's no question that there's going to need to be some balance at the end of the day, but what we were doing here, I think, is profound, laying some major groundwork that will be so important to the discussion going forward. And so it's great to have the good senator from Missouri here to create some balance for us going forward. I'm going to report briefly. It was a little bit of a rocky start. Felt like I was at the GOP state convention where you spend 2/3 of your time discussing the agenda before you get to the real work. But we were able to get that behind us very quickly and address some substantive issues. First of all, number one was the process of one state, one vote. A lot of discussion on that, but it was decided by the states represented there that there would be a process of one state, one vote. The state delegate process, this was very interesting. We had a lot of discussion, but ended up with allowing the states to pick their delegates the way they would like them to be selected. So let me give you a couple of the motions. By roll call vote, the states represented, it was unanimously approved that each state would develop its own delegate process, selection process. We had a motion that, after that motion, that we would exclude all members of Congress, state executive branch employees, i.e. the governor and any of his staff, and they would also exclude federal employees. And that motion failed. I think there's some good reason for that, but it goes back to this argument that the states want to be able to select their delegates the way they want them to be selected. Another motion was given that we have the state legislatures approve, at the end of the day, the delegates that would come and sit at a convention, and that one also failed. So again, I emphasize that there was a lot of feeling that the states will be deciding how their delegates are elected. Senator, do you have any other comments on that?
Not specific.
Okay. There was a motion made and tabled that the convention of the states shall address only those conventional amendments described and approved by 2/3 of the states in their applications, resulting in the call for a specific convention. Discussion, the two polar ends of this was in Utah, we can't even get a convention of the states resolution out of committee. And we've tried for the last several years. The whole worry of a runaway convention is a big deal, and language that would restrict the convention is important to at least our state. My personal feeling was the other end of the continuum that we discussed was we could call a convention for the purpose of proposing amendments and not be specific, and let those delegates decide the issues that they would address, and give them a lot of leeway. And we decided at the end of the day, because of some discussion there, that we'd go ahead and table that motion and address it as we go further in the process. I think there's a lot of merit to giving that convention a lot of rope. But again, at the end of the day, we've got to get a number of states there to even have a convention. So that's going to be some further discussion.